It's time for Love Talk with the Love Ladies, Cathy, Kerri, and Marlene.
Hello, friends, and welcome to LoveTalk Network. Coach Kerri Brinkoeter here with Cathy Endebrock and Marlene McMichael. We are just real people sharing real stories about God's love. You are going to love our interview today with Dr. Susan Michael. Stepping into history, Dr. Susan Michael's path to purpose in the Holy Land. She is, wow, y'all, that was a great interview that we had with her. I'm so excited for our listening friends to hear it. All things Israel today, friends. If you've ever had questions about how Israel fits into the puzzle, replacement theology, anti-Semitism, we talk about it today.
Yeah. What's going on with Hamas over there right now? Why can't there be peace? And has, like you said, replacement theology, has the church replaced Israel in God's promises, in God's purpose, in God's plans? We're going to be talking about all of that. And I mean, these are kind of hot topics of discussion right now, but they're not just hot topics. They are foundational questions that we need biblical answers to. And Dr. Susan Michael walks us through the biblical answers to these questions.
She does. Really great interview. We'll introduce her to you guys in a little bit. But Cathy, hi.
Yeah.
Are you breathing? Friends, Cathy's baby daughter just got married this week.
Yeah.
This week.
Yes.
Literally in real time.
In real time.
Have you slept?
I slept almost for like a full day afterwards. It was amazing.
The wedding was fabulous.
It was fabulous. It was beautiful. It was so perfect. It was so sweet and lovely. And they did these vows to each other. And oh my gosh, from start to finish, it was so fantastic. And we were surrounded. You know, it's who you're surrounded with. It makes a huge difference. Is it going to be a dream or is it going to be drama, right? And I will tell you, we were surrounded with the best people. So not only just the friends and the family that surrounded us, but when we were looking at organizing this wedding, you know, the vendors that you use are so important. The photographers, for the first time ever, we used a wedding coordinator. I've never used a wedding coordinator for our first two weddings. And for this one, I thought, well, it's in Dallas. I don't know anybody in Dallas. I need help. Mm-hmm. And we used this wedding coordinator. Her name is Jill Bird, B-Y-R-D. And friends, you can find her on Facebook, Jill Bird Weddings. She was amazing and made all the difference. And then Faith, who loves photography, really important for her to have a good photographer. There's a husband and wife team. The girl is Angel. The guy is Larry. Angel and Larry Photography. They made the day so extra special. And even at one point, one of my other daughters came up to me and she's like, Mom, where did you find these photographers? They're amazing.
They were great.
We love them. Yes. So those two were fantastic. And I mean, even like the DJ, there were some changes on the day of, which DJs who are the MC, they hate last minute changes. And we had DJ Connection that just like helped us roll with it. They were amazing. And you know, obviously, just the bride and the groom, being surrounded by family and friends, getting to be with everyone. It was dreamy. It was a dreamy experience, and it was just lovely from start to finish.
Actually, that's only half the story, because this was Cathy's second wedding in 2 months.
58 days.
Yeah,
okay.
That's true.
That's 2
days,
months.
yes.
And they were in 2 different states.
Yes. Yeah.
So she's a little spacey today. Just don't mind her.
A little bit. Sorry about that. So the first wedding, it was this country wedding in this beautiful little chapel with stained glass. That was my daughter Jordan, and she got married in Idaho, just outside of Boise, Idaho, and it was just beautiful and perfect for her. And my youngest, Faith, 58 days later, at a place that when the flower girls came up, they said, we're getting married in a castle. And it did. It looked kind of like a castle. It was out in Little Elm, Texas, and it was perfect for Faith and Michael. And I just, when all of our daughters, they're so different, and they each married just men that are perfect for them, who love Jesus and whose families love Jesus. And they just adore one another. And all of the son-in-laws love each other. They talk on texts and like share ideas about these Endebrock girls and what to do. And we just love it. It just shows God's hand in all of this, that he is so good that God loves to create families. He loves to create families that love one another and that have a unity. And Eric and I have just seen it, that just the unity between these young men that God has brought, that has just drawn our family even closer together. It just is a marvel to watch God work and to see his faithful hand just creating and doing good things.
So happy for you. I'm so happy for you. Frankly, I don't know how you're going to spend your time now, Cathy.
What will I do? I don't know. But I mean, how awesome.
There's no more weddings to plan.
And your son, Logan, just starting, what do you call that line? Dancing
around?
Gosh, the cha-cha line? What is that?
I guess that's what it was.
Yeah.
Of course. We were like, yep, there goes Logan leading the cha-cha line.
You need to introduce our guests.
I do need to introduce our guests.
Yes.
We're glad that everything went well, Cathy, and thank you for the update. I know our listening friends have been waiting for that. So, yes, today, a wonderful guest, Dr. Susan McMichael. We're so grateful that she joined us today. She has authored several books. Friends, you can find those anywhere you buy books. The first one that I'll recommend is Every Generation's Story. It's really a fantastic story, all the way from the silent generation to baby boomers to Gen X, Gen Z, I forgot one in there, millennials, stories of people that have found Israel, have made trips to Israel, found Israel, and that their lives were radically changed because of their interaction with the people there, the country itself. So I would definitely recommend that one, Every Generation's Story. Also, Replacement Theology is kind of a pamphlet almost, a booklet. Marlene, you called it a booklet, Replacement Theology, and also one on anti-Semitism that she also was the author of. Marlene's got that one. And you're going to hear all about those today. Dr. Susan McMichael, she's pioneered the development of the International Christian Embassy in Embassy Jerusalem in the United States and around the world. She currently serves as the ministry's USA president and is a member of the ICEJ's International Board of Directors. Her involvement with the ICEJ began as a graduate student at Jerusalem University in 1980, the same year that the Christian Embassy was first established. After completing her master's degree there in Israel, she just had a heart to further the embassy's mission along fellow Americans. And after a season assisting the ministry's international leadership to host a series of very high-profile pro-Israeli conferences across the USA, I'm sure she was fantastic at it, she was asked to head the ICEJ's USA branch. I know. And she was in her 20s. I mean, really amazing. She is a gifted teacher, author, international speaker. You will hear that today. We asked some very difficult questions, and she's so graceful and eloquent and honest, obviously, in the way that she answers these questions. She's often called upon to address very complex issues and sensitive issues when it comes to anti-Semitism, Islam, Jewish-Christian relations, and current events in the Middle East. And y'all, she has a really unique perspective. Her husband is an Egyptian Christian. I mean, he grew up in Egypt. And so she has a very unique perspective and love for not only the people of Israel, all people in Israel, the Arabs, the Muslims, the Jews, and the Christians, but the people in the Middle East. And so I found her, a very unique perspective as far as just the personal relationships that she has. In recent years, she has produced several educational tools to enable other Christians to do the same, including this website, which is fantastic, you guys, IsraelAnswers.com. If you are like, I don't get this fascination with Israel, go to IsraelAnswers.com and you'll be able to find a lot of great resources there. Susan has built the U.S. branch of the ICEJ into a scripturally sound and reputable ministry, evidenced in its leadership in one of the strongest networks of evangelical leaders in America, the American Christian Leaders for Israel. Y'all, she was also honored as the 2023 Christian Woman of Distinction by She Leads America and the U.S. House of Representatives. Great interview today with Dr. Susan Michael, and you will hear that when we return to Love Talk right after this. Hello, friends, and welcome back to Love Talk Network. You are here in studio with Coach Kerri Brinkoeter, Cathy Endebrock, and Marlene McMichael, and our new friend, Dr. Susan Michael. You heard her introduced in the first segment. Wow, what a litany of accomplishments, Dr. Michael. Welcome to Love Talk Network.
Oh, it's great to be with you today, so thank you.
Well, we're excited about this program on Israel. Dr. Michael, to open us up, how did you come to know that Jesus loves you?
Well, I tell you, it was about 50 years ago. That dates me, but as a teenager, I grew up in the Presbyterian church, but it was a very small church in a small rural community, and over half the church was my extended family and relatives.
Oh, wow.
And but that church never actually preached the gospel, so I really didn't know the gospel message. But I loved the Lord, but I just didn't know him. And as a teenager, I began to get exposed to the gospel through a couple of other communities, one being the Baptist friends and the other being some charismatic friends. And the Lord worked in my life about a year. It was just drawing me to him and showing me that he was there. And so I went to the pastor of my church, the Presbyterian church, and I said, is there a modern translation of the Bible that I could read? And he said, yes. And it's called Good News for the Modern Man. It was probably just the New Testament. But the Lord opened the door for me. 2 weeks, I just sat, I read through that entire New Testament. And by the end of it, I was just a different person. Wow. The power of the Holy Spirit was at work in my life. And within a month, I went forward in a church service and gave my life to the Lord. And I've never looked back, never turned away. That was in 1975. So I really did just celebrate 50 years this month of walking with the Lord. And what a blessing to know him and to have his peace in my life.
I love that. I love that someone recognized a need and was, I guess, aware enough to mentor you in that way. What an absolute blessing. If we could all have our eyes opened that much to those around us, I think we'd be on a great path. Well, what a great story.
Well, I have something I'm really curious about, because you said that while you were growing up, you hated history and that you avoided studying language, yet at age 19, you found yourself on your way to Israel to study Hebrew at the Institute of Holy Land Studies, which is now Jerusalem University College. And so this actually led to a fascination with history and ultimately to the Bible becoming alive for you. Can you tell us a little bit about that, how God took you from just hating history to just being a student of it?
I think I hated it because of probably the way it was taught. You just memorize dates and you have no idea what's really happening in the story. But I was into the arts and I was much better at math and science. But it just shows you that in 1975, when I gave my life to the Lord, everything began to change. And that was one of them. I'd never been interested in current affairs. I didn't know the first thing about the Middle East, but I loved the Bible. And I was devouring the Bible as a new believer. And so when I went to college, I decided to major in the Bible. I didn't have a specific career in mind. I just wanted to learn the Bible. And so I got straight A's. I absolutely loved all my classes because I loved the subject. And, you know, we read our Bible devotionally and apply it to our lives as we should. But sometimes we get stuck there and we don't understand. What I learned when I first went to Israel is that the Bible is also a history book. It's about real people, real places, real stories. It's not just spiritual stories that we read and then try to apply some spiritual principle to our life. It actually really happened. And so when you go to Israel and you sit on a hill and you review the scriptures that took place in that valley before you, these things, it comes alive. It's like the Bible stands up. It takes on flesh and bones and it just stands up. It's so real. You understand how accurate it is, that the smallest of details in that story make sense when you see it in the physical settings. Mm-hmm. So that's how I became interested in history, and that I became to understand history is his story. The Bible tells us a bit of history. There's a whole lot more history that is still just as sacred, just as much about God and his actions in the world today. And so that's a part of the turnaround. And that's why I wrote the book, The 3D Bible, to help bring that realization to the Bible study here back at home in the United States. And to explain that, there's 3 different levels of reading your Bible. The first is that devotional self-application. The second, a lot of us do Bible studies at church, studies of a whole book of the Bible, or we take a doctrine of the Bible. We study the Bible that way. But the third level is when you understand, you read it in its historical and cultural context. And that's what happens when you go to Israel. And that's what I encourage all your listeners. You've got to make that trip to Israel if you haven't before.
Well, Dr. Michael, I have not been to Israel, but my life has certainly been affected by it because my daughter went and was changed immediately. And I have this, I tell this to people often. I said, in my experience, and I found it to be true, one of two things happen when you go to Israel for the first time. You either go over there and you go, well, that was a nice historical trip and it was wonderful to see all those wonderful places and all that. And you kind of go, okay. Or you come back totally enamored with the country and you've got to move there immediately. and that was the case. My daughter is a lover of Israel. She actually is just taking a job where with the, I have to think about it. It's the Jewish Federations of North America. And and she's a Gentile, so her experience matches yours in many ways, and it's just really exciting to see God at work because I believe He handpicks His champions, and you're one of them, she's one of them, and that's quite remarkable.
Well, Marlene, I've heard this story over and over and over that someone went to Israel and it just changed their life.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what happened to me. It's what happened to your daughter, but it happens all the time.
All the time. Yes.
The Israeli government, the tourism ministry has recognized that tourism to Israel is so different. Most tourism, you go one time, it's like, well, I've done that, check it off my bucket list. But for Israel, everybody on the plane home, they're just planning their next trip. They can't get enough of it. And it's a return tourism industry that's quite unique around the world.
I love that. For our listening friends that are watching us on YouTube, I'm going to hold this book up right here. Dr. Michael wrote this book called Every Generation's Story. I loved this. She goes through generations of people, the silent generation born from 1928 to 1945, their stories of finding Israel and the impact on their lives. And then the baby boomers, and then the Gen Xers, the millennials. And Dr. Michael, this book it's great. I mean, people's lives radically changed by their interactions in Israel. And you were much the same.
Yeah, and it's not changed. It's just here today, gone tomorrow either. They came back with a lifelong passion and commitment to be engaged in Israel or in Jewish-Christian relations or combating anti-Semitism. And that book was so fun to read, the 18 stories of Christians who have been changed in Israel and came back and have made a difference in the world as a result. And the encouraging thing is we see the same thing happen even with Generation Z. We always get a little concerned about the younger generations. Are they getting it or not? But we're finding if they just make it to Israel, they're having that same life-changing experience. They're coming back with the same passion. And, I was 19 when I first got to go. And I'm so grateful for that. When I was 19, not a lot of 19-year-olds were going. Now it's much easier. It's much safer. It's much more common. And so we encourage all age groups. If you can go, go.
I'd like to talk with you about an event that happened in 1980 where you were present during a very traumatic moment for Israel when the Israeli Knesset passed the Jerusalem bill in 1980, making Jerusalem the undivided capital. But that caused significant international uproar, causing many nations to actually move their embassies out of Jerusalem. And simultaneously, while you were there in Israel, you were part of an effort to establish the International Christian Embassy of Jerusalem. Can you talk us through a bit about how this period in time really shaped your understanding of Christian support for Israel, the difference that makes, and how that led to your involvement with this organization?
Yes, my first trip, as I said, at 19 was a summer study program in 1978. And so I had decided quickly that if at all possible, I wanted to go back to Israel and study more. And so I finished my bachelor's degree here in the United States. And in August of 1980, I arrived in Jerusalem to start a master's degree at the same little Christian school there, right on Mount Zion, right outside the old city walls of Jerusalem. And 1 month later was the very first celebration of the Christian celebration of the Feast of Tabernacles. Now, let me explain the connection. In the 70s, there were a number of Christian leaders living in Jerusalem that met regularly to pray. Some of them were involved in academic institutions. There were journalists, there were intercessors, there were people there on behalf of their church, just felt called to the city. But they prayed regularly for Israel, and they had this burden to start a Christian organization in support of Israel, because in the 70s, there were none. If one existed, it was out in one country. But this is coming from the heart of Jerusalem by a very international group of Christians. So they already had the burden and been praying about it. And they also began to plan to have a Christian celebration of the Feast of Tabernacles, which is one of the three great feasts of the Lord. And so they had organized the very first one. And right 2 months before that feast was held, as you already said, the Israeli government passed the Jerusalem bill declaring all of Jerusalem to be the eternal and undivided capital of the state of Israel. And there was this tremendous international uproar. And so the embassies that were located in Jerusalem literally packed up and moved out of the city in protest because the Arab countries were threatening oil embargoes on any country that recognized this. And so these Christians at the Feast of Tabernacles announced, we do not support what our governments have done, and therefore we're starting an international Christian embassy in Jerusalem that represents the millions of Bible-believing Christians around the world who understand the significance of Jerusalem and stand with Israel. So the lesson for me in all of that was that we were taking a biblical stand, which actually had political ramifications today. But it's very clear from the Bible, Jerusalem is the spiritual capital of the Jewish people and really of the Christian world as well. It's very significant. And we had to stand with the Jewish people's historic right to their holy city and to the Temple Mount. And, the other lesson is not just that our biblical stance has political ramifications, but that we are being prophetic in these days because the Hebrew prophets foretold of a day when the Jewish people would return to their ancient homeland and Jerusalem would be rebuilt. And so we as Christians were standing in agreement that now is the time to favor Zion. Yes, the set time has come, as the psalmist said. And so it was prophetic, it was political, but it's biblical. And that is what makes up our stance in support of Israel.
I would love to address that quickly, because, we do see that even after the church was established in Acts and the church has grown and there's so many different denominations, we see the Lord continuing to fulfill his promises to Israel in gathering them back together and establishing them as a nation. Yet, among many Christians and many denominations, there is this belief, some call it replacement theology, but basically it's the belief that the church has replaced Israel in God's plans. Could you just address that briefly for our listeners who maybe have heard this before, or who maybe have accepted this belief that Israel no longer has a place in God's plan and that the church is now the fulfiller of his promises?
Yes, you're absolutely right. And I would encourage any Christian listening to this that has always just assumed that God was finished with the Jewish people, that he's now working with the church, to reread your Bible, because it actually doesn't say that. But a lot of man's interpretation has brought you to that conclusion. Secondly, in the book of Genesis, when God made his promises to Abraham, it was an everlasting covenant, and there was no time clock on it. And in fact, if we believe that God gave up on the Jewish people and has relegated them to some status of, being under judgment or being rejected, then God is not a faithful God. Because when you read his promises to Israel throughout the Old Testament, it's forever. And there are forward-looking promises that one day, even if they did sin, and even if he did scatter them to the nations, that one day he would bring them back. That's at the heart of the Mosaic covenant. In the book of Deuteronomy, read there, he promises that. So what we're seeing today is the return of the Jewish people to their ancient homeland in defiance of all of history. No other people group has had this phenomenal history that they were able to maintain their identity and their nationhood 2,000 years, and then that they were able to return to their ancient homeland and reestablish sovereignty there. So we have to understand this could only happen if God is behind it, and if God is behind it, we should be behind it, and we should be blessing it. And it's a real wake-up call to the church to realize God's promises to Israel are yea and amen, and they're still valid. He's fulfilling his promises today, and it's not over until it's all over. They are back in the land for the next great chapter in history. Yes, God is also working with the church. He has called us to take the news of this great gospel and the return of Jesus that's coming, to take the news of that all around the world. We have a calling too. We're a part of the story too, but we do not replace the Jewish people in the story.
That is, you're so eloquent as you discuss this, and graceful, because that is a really big topic and a sticking point for many. And so thank you for that. Also, you have written a beautiful book here called Replacement Theology, What It Is and Why It Matters, compiled by Dr. Susan Michael and Karen Engel. And so, friends, let me get that in my camera right here. If y'all want to pick that up, you certainly can. Replacement Theology. It was also very insightful pamphlet here as well, Dr. Michael. Thank you for that. I actually love the story of how you originally met your husband when you were in Israel, and you didn't realize this connection until you had known your husband for 30 years, I think, is what you said. So tell us the story, and tell us about your love for the Arab people as well.
Well, the whole story would take a good half an hour to tell, so I'm going to have to skip over
the abridged version.
A lot of key elements. But after living in Israel for 2 years, getting a master's degree, learning all about the Jewish people and all about Israel, I recognized that I didn't have the same love and appreciation for the Arab world. And I did ask God to work in my heart about that. And he did some amazing things in the next year of my life. And but let me back up. While I was studying in Israel, we, some of the students there were very into archaeology. And some of the guys had taken a week trip down to Egypt, saw the pyramids and all. They came back talking about it. And my girlfriend and I, that we were there were a few female students, but there were a few of us. And we were like, we felt very left out. So we decided to go ourselves. Now, this is in 1981, I believe. And the peace accords with Egypt were only a couple of years old. And there was a real euphoria over peace between Egypt and Israel. And a lot of Israeli tour groups were going to Egypt. And so we signed up with one of those Israeli tour groups. Now, on a Friday morning at like 5 a.m., we boarded a bus in Jerusalem and rode the bus all the way to Cairo. It's about a 10-hour, 12-hour ride. And you go through the top of the Sinai Desert. And what I didn't know then, but I fully get it now, is that there's a very thin, very fine desert dust that you don't even see it's there. And secondly, that I am very sensitive to any kind of dust. So by the time I arrived in Cairo, my head felt twice as big as it was, and my sinuses were all impacted. And so I asked at the front desk of the hotel we were staying in for a pharmacy. And I remember it so well. And he said, it's very, very easy. You just go out the door, go to the right down the little road we're on, cross the big road and go straight into the door. It's just a straight line into the front door of this pharmacy. So I did, and I asked for some medicine. And there was a young man, handsome young man that waited on me in the white pharmacy coat, gave me the medicine, and I left. And I didn't think a whole lot about it. And then it was about 3 years later, I think I'm in Washington, D.C., and another long story. I wish I could tell it all. It's fascinating. But I'm part of an Arabic church in Washington, D.C., and in walks this handsome Egyptian who had just moved to America. And we got to know each other, and a year and a half later, we're married. And sometime in the next year or two, we're early newlyweds, and all of a sudden, I tell him that story. He said, "Wait a minute, I know that hotel, and I know that pharmacy." Now, my husband had a pharmaceutical degree from Cairo University. He worked as a pharmacist, but most of his work was in pharmaceutical sales. And he said, every afternoon at around 5 o'clock, I would go to that pharmacy because it was owned by my good friend's father. My friend ran it. He said, I'd help wait on the customers. A lot of them were tourists from that hotel in that area. And I remembered that when I went to that pharmacy, it was late in the afternoon because half of the cars had their lights on and half didn't. It was just dusk. So it was probably around 5 o'clock. And we were like, could we have met? Well, we didn't know. So as you said, 30 years later, I'm writing that book, Every Generation's Story, and I'm writing the story in there about it. And I said, hey, George, remember, it's just such an amazing story that we may have met before we even knew each other and met and married. He said, hey, wait a minute. He said, was that young pharmacist heavy or thin? And I said, well, he was very thin. He said, well, then that was me because my friend was very heavy. And I said, George, it took you 34 years to remember that detail, which is such a classic example of the male-female brain.
Right.
I'm into the details. And at that moment, I realized we really did meet. And we didn't just meet. He was taking care of me.
Wow.
He was giving me medicine.
Wow.
And he takes care of me all the time now as the most loving, caring, protective husband. And it's so prophetic. And when when you hear that story, you realize God's hand at work in our lives. But we have no idea. I was absolutely clueless, but he wanted us to know how much he was in this relationship and this marriage and the calling on our lives and on us as a couple.
I love that. You know, when we pray, Lord, give me a love for Arabs, he's like, oh, I'll give you a love.
Oh, my goodness. Well, Dr. Michael, over the years, you have built the International Christian Embassy Jerusalem in the United States and around the world. I mean, you've spoken internationally. You are so well known. You serve as the USA president of the International Christian Embassy Jerusalem. Tell us a little bit about your work there, and what do you believe are some of the most significant misconceptions that American Christians have about Israel, and how do we address these?
Wow. Okay.
I know we have about 5 minutes left in this segment. Yeah.
No, the International Christian Embassy Jerusalem, I told about our founding, and it kind of sounds like it's a political work, but it's not. Our mission statement from day one is Isaiah 40, verse 1, which says, comfort ye, my people. And we knew that we were really changing the face of Jewish-Christian relations, and that we were coming out there in Jerusalem, forming a global organization. So how do you express love and comfort to a people? But you have to do it in very practical ways. Otherwise, your words are empty. So we started immediately. Humanitarian aid works all around the country. And in the last 45 years, we've worked all throughout Israel, every village, every city, every people group. We have a home for Holocaust survivors. We placed bomb shelters in dangerous, vulnerable communities. We help with trauma counseling for young people that are at risk. And we're on and on and on, all kinds of just social work. But we do it all with the message that we're doing this as Christians, and we're funded by Christians around the world. So that's really the heart of our ministry in Israel. But we started immediately forming branches in countries all around the world. And today we have a reach into almost every country of the world. We have a presence in about 90 countries. And so I'm here in the United States. And my goal here in the United States is, number one, to raise funds and awareness of those projects that we have in Israel. But secondly, is to educate the Christian church in my nation. So I've built a lot of educational resources, from publishing books to, we have hundreds of articles on my blog. We have online courses. We have podcasts and videos and lots of resources to educate the church. And then thirdly is to take a political stand when we need to. But back to your question then, what is the greatest misunderstanding that we confront in the American church that we've building these resources on? And I think the main one is the replacement theology that we've already talked about. It's very prevalent, and it's an assumption. And once we begin to really teach from the Bible the calling on the Jewish people, why were they the chosen people? We are grafted into that calling, but we don't replace it. The light bulbs, begin to go off. So that's one major misunderstanding. Today in modern society, we have a couple other misunderstandings. And one is about the fact that sometimes Israel has to fight a military war. And more in the world today, everybody just moves away from the whole concept of war, where we should be one global village. We should not have differences, and we should have peace. And we all yearn and long for peace. We all want peace, and we all hate war. My father was a World War II vet. It was horrible what that generation went through in that war. No one ever wants to fight another war. But even the New Testament teaches that the role of government is to take up the sword against evil. And so the role of my government is to protect me from evil, from those in other countries that might want to take over my country and threaten me militarily. That's the role of my government. That's the role of the Israeli government. And so they have been involved in actually a year and a half now of war. Mm-hmm. And a lot of Christians don't have an understanding of why that is and the importance of it. So there's lots of misunderstandings, and because there's so much misinformation today, that we are constantly having to get out the other side of the story. Social media is full of lies, false images, false videos, false narratives, demonization of Israel, and we're constantly having to confront that.
We've definitely seen that currently, even with an image of a child that was used by a major New York newspaper. They admittedly used a false image to propagate a very false narrative about what is going on in Israel. Well, Dr. Michael, we are going to go to break. We're going to hear a word from our sponsors who keep Love Talk on the air week after week. For 40 years now, Love Talk has been sharing the good news. We are real people sharing real stories about God's love, and we love what you are sharing with us today. We're going to take a word from our sponsors, and we will be right back with Dr. Susan Michael. Stay with us.
Hello, friends, and welcome back to LoveTalk Network. Coach Kerri Brinkoeter here with Cathy Endebrock and Marlene McMichael and the amazing Dr. Susan Michael, who is walking us through all things Israel today, which is amazing. She pioneered the development of the International Christian Embassy, Jerusalem, in the United States, and currently serves as the ministry's USA president. And we're so thankful that you have spent so much time with us today, Dr. Michael. Marlene, you had a very current events question.
Well, I do, because this war has been going on for, as you said, probably close to a year and a half now. And I really am hoping, because there is no other place like the Middle East, and I'm really hoping you can share a little bit of the dynamics and the belief systems of the different cultures that surround Israel and why this is a constant, seems to be a constant issue. But I also would like to, for the sake of the church and Americans, how do we stop anti-Semitism, and why is it so prevalent? Because, you wouldn't go do some of the heinous acts on just a person that you passed in the street. It's they target Jews. Mm-hmm. Why is that? I mean, and if you say, I don't want to talk about that, that's fine. But if you could address some of that, I think it would be helpful for some of us who are out here answering questions.
No, I'm happy to answer both of them. And actually, they both have the same answer.
Good.
Let me first say, you've heard my story, and my husband being an Egyptian Christian, he's a Middle East expert, was an advisor to the U.S. government for many years. And I've learned so much from him about the Middle East and all. We have a love for all the peoples of the Middle East, if they're Jewish, if they're Arab, if they're Muslim, if they're Christian, because Jesus died for all people. So I want to be very clear. We need to pray for the Middle East and pray for these people with a heart of love and a broken heart for what they're going through. The problem, if you understand that God chose the Jewish people to carry out and bring about his plan of world redemption, they not only gave us Jesus, who died on the cross for us, but they are back in the land to mediate the Davidic covenant, which is God's promises to David of an everlasting throne. That's the kingdom of God is coming to earth, and Jesus is returning. And when you understand the key role of the Jewish people, you understand why evil is absolutely set against them. And we see that in Revelation 12, where Israel is this woman and the dragon is sitting at her feet. And it says the dragon becomes enraged with her. That is the spiritual picture of what's behind all of of everything going on today in the Middle East and with the rise of anti-Semitism. It is evil, and these evil forces hate the Jewish people because they hate the God of Israel. And God has made all these promises that at the end of the day is going to bring the demise of evil. Therefore, evil wants to live and is trying to thwart that plan. And once a Christian understands that, they'll understand what's at play politically and in current events in the Middle East. We have a rise of a form of Islam, the jihadist movement. You could call it the Islamist movement that we see in all these terrorist groups and in the state of Iran. It's an ideology that says Islam must dominate the world and that everything I do to bring about that domination will be blessed by God. So if I'm a martyr for the cause, that's fine. I'm going to go to heaven, and there's 72 virgins and all of this. And that's what's at the heart of these jihadist groups, including Hamas in Gaza, Hezbollah in Lebanon, Al-Qaeda, Islamic Jihad, ISIS. They're all from this same ideology. And so that is a move that says we will not accept a Jewish presence on this land in the heart of the Islamic world. The land of Israel used to be under Islamic rule during the Ottoman Empire days. And once Israel was reborn in 1948, now there's Jewish sovereignty over this land that used to be Islamic. And so the fight is over getting the Jews off the land entirely so it will come back into the house of Islam. And these jihadist groups are completely committed to that because it's a part of the spread and domination of Islam. Believe me, if Israel were to fall today to them, you and I are on the list next. They're just coming for us next because this is about the world. That's at the heart of the problem. The Palestinians are kind of caught up in that, but also for the Palestinian leaders who seem to be a little bit more balanced. They're not as Islamist, but they are making a lot of money off of the state of war that they live in. So Yasser Arafat died a billionaire. Mahmoud Abbas, the current leader, is a billionaire. His sons are billionaires. They are pocketing so much money off of all of this international aid, so they don't want peace. Then the income's going to stop. So that's a part to play. But looking at the rise of anti-Semitism now, you understand, and Kerri, you may have, you've got my little booklet also on anti-Semitism. Yeah. I really encourage your readers to get it. It's just a little bitty booklet, simple to read, but it shows you the history of anti-Semitism and how that it just keeps coming back with a different face, a different expression. And, but you think you stamped it out, like we thought we got rid of it with the Nazis, and now lo and behold, it's back and it's even stronger. It's no longer based on Nazi ideology. It's based on more of a modern ideology, but it's the same old evil forces that keep coming back generation after generation. That's how you know it's evil. It's not about politics. It's absolute evil. And my concern is that we keep it out of the Church of Jesus Christ. And if we believe as a church, if we believe that the Jewish people were so bad that they were rejected by God and they've been replaced by the church, it makes us vulnerable to believing every lie that comes down the pipeline. And that's my fear. That's why we have to get rid of any kind of replacement belief in the church for them to understand the special calling on the Jewish people and to stand with them and for them and bless them and help them and push back against this evil face of anti-Semitism that we see in our day. Now that was probably a 2-hour answer summarized in 5 minutes.
It was a good answer.
Well, it was
great summary.
You know, my great grandfather was chief rabbi in Vilnius, Russia, and so he died when basically during the pogroms in the late 1800s, early 1900s, and my great grandmother escaped with her baby brother to the United States. And so we used to talk about our Jewish heritage as a, just something where God has rescued us in a form of like pride, if you will. And with everything that has been happening recently, my daughter went and did a semester abroad in Melbourne, Australia. And I told her, tell no one about your Jewish heritage. Do not mention it to anyone, because they were having a lot of marches on campus that were very just pro-Palestine and anti-Jew, and it kind of scared us sending her there. And all my 3 daughters now, they have been married too very recently. And during that courting process, one of the things that my husband and I told them is you have to be very honest with your boyfriends about your heritage, because if something ever happened again in the United States, like happened in Germany, which I couldn't imagine it happening, but these days I can, I told them they will come for you and your children, and your husbands need to know like who they are marrying, that you do have that in your background, even though we all love the Lord and we're all Christian. That bloodline is in our heritage. So it is very real, and it is something where someone with that heritage, it is a scary thing to consider. And I agree, God did not chop down the tree. He just grafted the church into it. And so that shows, again, he did not replace that tree. He just grafted the church into it. And, that's kind of the metaphor that we use with our kiddos against this replacement theology lie.
Well, Cathy, what a moving story. I've got chills as you're sharing that. But it's so true. If you told me 10 years ago we were going to have the rise of anti-Semitism in America that we're seeing today, I would have told you you were crazy. I can't believe what we're seeing and how dangerous it's becoming. And over half of the Jews in America will conceal their identity at one time or another. That's unheard of in America. And they're in shock. They feel so alone. Yeah. And so one of the things we're doing is reaching out to the Jewish community and with rabbis and leaders and letting them know you are not alone. We're here for you. And they're kind of like, where have you been? We have felt so all alone. And so we want to help build relations at the local level between Jews and Christians to let the Jewish communities know we are with you. We're praying for you, but we're with you, and we'll stand up with you.
We're about to run out of time. Could you tell our listeners how they can connect with your efforts and the embassy, and just how to get hold of you?
Gladly, yes. Okay. Our website is ICEJ USA.org. And there they can go to my blog for all the articles. They'll find our ICEJU online courses, all of our resources. They can look around and find them. It's ICEJUSA.org.
Thank you so much, Dr. Michael. I would also point people to IsraelAnswers.com. You've built a beautiful website there, which has educational seminars, online courses. There's so much there, so much rich information. So ICEJ USA as well as Israel Answers. Thank you, Dr. Susan Michael, for your time today on LoveTalk Network. We so appreciate it. Friends, for Cathy, Marlene, I'm Coach Kerri Brinkoeter. We'll see you next time right here on LoveTalk Network.